Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. I am a Brazilian and US attorney, and today we're going to be talking about the FGTS. Now, I am in Lisbon, Portugal, and the reason for recording a video about a Brazilian subject abroad is because for most foreign citizens, they are going to be trying to draw this money while you're abroad. What's the reason for that? When you work in Brazil, you're going to be acquiring Social Security, and in Brazil, the Social Security fund is known as FGTS. And this fund is going to accrue for as long as you work in Brazil. And to make things a little bit difficult, it's not going to be available for you to draw immediately after you leave a job in Brazil. Instead, usually this is going to take between 6 months to a year, and only then the money is going to become available for you to draw. And unfortunately, when the time comes, you could be elsewhere and it may be very difficult for you to draw this money on your own. So just making sure you understand it, this video is for foreign citizens who have worked in Brazil as employees and therefore were paid Brazilian Social Security. And now they have the opportunity of draw this money and take this money to another country. Now, let's say if you stopped working and you're still in Brazil, you could use the so-called INSS FGTS app, and there is a link in the description below for you to try to draw this money on your own. Now, remember, for that route to work, you're gonna need a few things. You're gonna need first a phone number in Brazil. Second, you need an active bank account in Brazil. If you are not in Brazil, you need to be willing to travel to Brazil to potentially troubleshoot steps of the process, particularly if the amount you have is high. And if you want to spend the money in Brazil, you're also going to have the possibility of getting this money without having to accomplish a currency exchange and sending the money elsewhere. So let's talk about the different routes for you to take the FGTS funds. The first route is for you to do it yourself. You will try to use the app and send money to your own bank account, again, as long as you still have an open bank account in Brazil. Now, if you're no longer living in Brazil, this should be a traditional bank account with a currency exchange capability and back office support. Because if your bank account is with something like Nubank or C6, those internet banks, they don't have the capability of handling a currency exchange and remittance abroad, particularly for large amounts. Whenever you're sending money from Brazil to abroad, there is a need for a whole compliance process that's going to require a traditional brick and mortar bank or a specialized currency exchange bank. This is very important, again, if you want to send this money abroad. All right, let's talk about 5 different scenarios in which you cannot accomplish that by yourself if you are living abroad. First thing, if you don't have a cell phone active in Brazil, you're not going to be able to receive confirmation codes because the FGTS app does not allow you to receive the confirmation code in a cell phone from abroad. Another restriction, if you don't have a bank account in Brazil to receive the funds, guess what? You can access the app, you can maybe access the code, but you cannot send the money abroad. Third restriction, if you have a bank account, but if your bank account does not have the capability of handling a currency exchange, guess what? You can receive the money in your bank account, but you cannot accomplish the remittance of the funds abroad. Now, particularly for large amounts, it's very important to know that you may have to potentially sign documents in person in Brazil. And to make things a little bit more challenging, sometimes you may need to do that more than once. So if you're living abroad, would you be available to travel multiple times to Brazil? Finally, if you are unable to come to Brazil to troubleshoot locked accounts and handle the currency exchange paperwork, that route may not be ideal for you. Now we're going to discuss about 3 options for what to do in case you are in those situations just discussed. If your RNM card, the RNM card is this one over here. If it is active, you can still go to a Brazilian consulate to get a power of attorney done, so a friend of yours can handle those things on your behalf in Brazil, and therefore you wouldn't need to travel potentially multiple times. The downside for this route is the risk of losing both the friend and your money. Let's not forget, money doesn't come easy in Brazil, and particularly when people are dealing with large amounts, there is always a risk that this is going to cause some type of issue. Another option is for you to come to Brazil during a break at work to personally handle the release procedures at the Caixa Econômica Federal, which is the entity that handles the release of the FGTS. Again, the downside here is that you may need to come more than a single time. You also need to remember you're not going to be able to communicate in English, and therefore you need to take a Portuguese speaker with you, like a friend, or you could hire a translator for this purpose. The third route is for you to hire a trustworthy attorney in Brazil to handle the entire thing for you. We attorneys can file a legal petition asking for a judge to authorize the withdrawal. Important for you to note, a power of attorney alone is not going to be enough for a lawyer to draw the money. You actually need to file a legal petition at a court of law and follow multiple procedures in order to achieve the withdrawal of the money. So once the attorney receives the money, the attorney is going to also need to submit paperwork to a Brazilian specialized bank that can handle the currency exchange and remit the funds to you. From this outline, it may sound very easy, but in our experience, this is a process that could easily take between 6 months to a year of work. And therefore, attorneys and law firms are going to naturally charge you a percentage of the money being released. Don't forget, if you try to avoid legal fees and work with cheap attorneys, you may end up getting into a situation in which this money is never coming, it's always coming tomorrow. This is one of those cases in which being cheap is not really a good idea. The downside of this route is that not many attorneys know how to handle the currency exchange, and many attorneys in Brazil, they are used to take more cases that they are able to handle, particularly if you're trying to work with the cheapest attorney around. So I hope those tips were helpful. Don't forget to download our ebook, The 7 Most Common Mistakes When Getting Your FGTS Funds from Brazil. And see you in next video.